We are live. Hello and good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can see it, but up there on my screen, we've got Katie Sharples, who is the head of PR and marketing at Eden Group, which are the parent company of Lock Hotels. Then above me just there, we've got Rosie Parsons, who is the owner of Rosie Parsons Photography. And just here, I don't know if that's left or right to you guys, is the wonderful Jen Bayford, who is the co-director of Growth Animals Marketing Company. Now, you're going to hear as little as possible from me, which for those of you that know me is great. But just to intro the event for you, we are going to basically be looking at this event across 3 pillars. We're going to have how do we understand our brand to start with? We're going to then go into how we develop our brand identity. And finally, we're going to go on to how we take the brand to market. Now, while we're doing this, we're also going to be taking questions from the chat box on the right-hand side. It doesn't matter if you're a koala, an owl, or a falcon, to be honest. So on that note, I'm going to introduce you again to Jen. And Jen's going to talk to us about that very topic.
I sure am. Thank you very much, Chris. So I'm going to start with a bit of cliche advice before I start talking about the animals. And that advice is to be yourself. Now, I told you it would be cliche, didn't I? But to expand on this message a little bit more, I wanted to acknowledge that being oneself, particularly in a work setting, is kind of easier said than done. It's something that I've particularly struggled with myself over the years, because it can be really tricky to work out which parts of yourself to dial up when you're in a professional environment. But you are what makes you individual, unique, and brilliant. And by building a self-brand, it helps you get noticed, stand out, differentiate yourself from others. It adds your credibility and trust. And above all, it's far bloody easier to be yourself. And I wish 20 years ago, when I was starting out in my career, that someone had told me it's okay, well, not even okay, but actually beneficial to be yourself and to play to your strengths completely. So rewind 20 years ago, I came out of university into my first marketing job. And in my first ever review or appraisal, my line manager said to me that I needed to dress more professionally. She might have also said that I was doing a good job, or she might have had some constructive criticism in areas that I should have worked on professionally. But I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was, Jen, you need to appear a certain way to make it in your career. So I went off shopping with my mum. And the next day I turned up to the office, highly flammable in my office wear and patent shoe. And one of my problems is that I take things really literally and I like to conform. So I went on from this day mirroring behaviours of all the other Stepford brand managers in my various different roles over the years, perhaps progressing to a shift dress and a stiletto. But I was pretty much an identikit of all the others. We used the same language, we compared ourselves, we would only really compliment each other on our handbags. And I used the metaphor of clothing to represent more than just what I was wearing, but how I behaved, how I thought I had to behave, how I wanted to fit in. But over time, I realised something wasn't quite right and I was wearing a mask. It was getting me nowhere and I wasn't thriving in my career. I wouldn't speak up with ideas, and it wasn't seen to be etiquette in a corporate environment to be the creative person I am. But it was when I joined Goodwood and started working for my now business partner, Chris, that I realised that we should truly embrace our uniqueness and be ourselves. I realised I had years of creativity that had been stifled in that damn pencil skirt. So my business partner, Chris, was my manager at the time, as I said, and he had a team of around 15 people. But a big part of our strategy days together were spent learning about ourselves and learning about each other. So Chris introduced us to the animal quiz, which hopefully most of you have done already. But if not, I urge you to do it at some point in the near future. So you'll know now that the animal quiz is based on personality type theory with its roots in the work of Myers-Briggs. And the quiz was originally developed to make people more informed in their careers and education decisions, to boost self-awareness and to understand others better. And personally, I never, ever remember my own Myers-Briggs combination of letters, and I can never remember what they mean anyway. So the results of the animal quiz are much more easy to remember and really easy to action. So there are 16 different animal types. I happen to be a dolphin, as does Vanessa and as does Katie. So I'm sure Vanessa and Katie will agree, dolphins really are visionary, charismatic. And by the way, that's why we have animals in our business name. So we're the growth animals. Because when Chris and I set up the business in lockdown last year, we wanted a name that reflect our love of combining our differences and our individuality and our personal strengths. So we love that about our clients as well, because they've all got different characters, and it means that I can meet lots of different people. So whatever animal you turn out to be, the results of the quiz can really help you identify your super strengths that you have, and they will be integral to building your own brand you.
There we go.
There you go.
Fantastic, Jen. Just so everyone knows, I'm sure you were really wanting to know, I'm a falcon. But these Rosie, what are you?
I'm a falcon as well.
There we go.
I'm a dolphin.
We're split down the middle, 2 dolphins and 2 falcons. There's a Jen somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to figure that one out.
Jen, that's such good advice. And I think that's something I saw Katie and Rosie nodding away there as well. We have all started careers off somewhere where you're told to fit in that box. You're told to act a certain way, dress a certain way. And obviously, not everyone on this this chat will be able to do that. But once you are in your job or your chosen career, it's so freeing to really take the time to understand who you are as a person and express yourself as well.
It's really true, Chris, but also I think, so as a bit of context for everyone, Chris and I know each other because we used to work together for 3 years before Chris started Lightning. And I think I can really empathize with Jen's anecdote of the pencil skirt, right? And I kind of started out in a corporate comms agency, which was not a good fit. But when you're kind of coming out of uni and you're like, oh, any job will do. And then by some complete twist of fate, ended up going to This Is Beyond and fell into kind of lifestyle and hospitality. And I think as well, it was the company culture that really empowered me to be myself. And through the people in the company, I figured out who I was. But I think that's also a transition that you go through in your kind of early to late 20s as well. And I spent a lot of my formative years traveling with work, traveling with friends. So that was incredibly valuable. And then I think when I ended up leaving the company, there was a really conscious decision for me to find the right company for me, and to find, I knew who I was, and it was a case of finding a company that valued that, because I didn't want to conform. So when you are looking for your next move, maybe that's even to be a founder of your own company, because it might be that you feel ready to take that step. Personally, I'm not quite there yet. But when I decided I wanted to move, I think there were 3 people that I reached out to that I'd met along the way in my career. And one of them was one of our co-founders, Eric Jafari, at Eden. And I think timing also played a good part in that. But for me, it was really important to find the right brand that I felt like I could add value to as a human being, but then also completely understood the brand vision from the get-go and felt like I could go on that journey and take that journey with the brand too. So it's sort of a two-way street. I also believe that brands are built around people. So I think for me, when it comes to Lock, and I can talk about that in a bit more depth later on, you'll always find like a little bit of the team in every single bit of campaigning that we do. And you can put as many brand guidelines as you want in place, but ultimately that's what it boils down to, in my opinion.
100%. It's so true. And something that I always say when I'm talking to candidates and they're going, Chris, I'm not getting responses from my CV, is because they're trying to be something to everyone. And something that Rosie does really well is really is able to bring out the color and the personality behind the brand. So Rosie, if you tell us a bit more, I'd love to hear. I mean, we've gone through this together. Rosie's going to be taking my picture very soon. And something Rosie did was ask me a ton of questions about my brand. So I'd love you to tell the audience about that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting process that we go through when somebody books in for a photo shoot. They'll have sort of varying understanding of their own brand, and a lot of people will be sort of at the beginning of making their own brand, and they won't really have thought about what a personal brand means. But it's a representation of, like, it's you going out on the internet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, kind of meeting all your ideal clients wherever they're at home, and it's kind of putting your best face forward. And so when we kind of some questions before the shoot, I'm trying to kind of really understand who you are, how you want to come across, like who are your ideal clients. I ask people to give me 3 or 4 brand words that really, you know, they might say fun or they might say calm. I'll talk about, like, what are your favorite colors? What colors make you really happy and feel alive and excited? And people usually have, you know, favorite colors and things. And sort of warm colors, vibrant colors, like, really jump out online. And you know, my kind of photography is very colorful, and that's definitely not for everybody at all. There's lots of photographers that do lots of different styles, and it might be that your style is more of a muted kind of film-based, beachy kind of feel. And that you should find a photographer that does that kind of style and not try and, you know, I think it's really good to, like, specialize in a niche audience. And for me, that is, like, you know, people that love color and want to be vibrant. And so, yeah, we kind of go through the questionnaire and kind of, like, figure out what are those colors, think about the ideal client and how you want to come across to them, because those photos are going to be the first, like, way they see you. So you kind of want to come across really as you. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's so true. And I think something you said just there, Rosie, is not everyone needs to be colorful. If your color is black, that is great.
Yeah.
But it's understanding that brand. And guys just asked me a question, asked us a question in the comments here. Getting a job for the time being and moving on. Look, if you've got to pay the bills, you've got to pay the bills. I can see Jen about to pop up here as well. If you do have to pay the bills, you really have to. But we would always say, I think all of us collectively, that if you know your brand and you have a dream, then work towards that.
Yeah. And actually, Chris, what do you think as a recruiter about someone who's had a job on their CV for a short space of time? Because if someone does make that commitment to someone and find something better 6 months later, what do you think about that?
It's happening as we speak. I made an offer to a candidate earlier that got into recruitment of all industries. Yeah. It's a risk that the hiring managers of companies took in employing travel industry staff, is my opinion. I think as long as there's context behind it, there's a bloody pandemic going on. It's no different to if a hiring manager is asking, what did you do for the last 6 months to someone who's been unemployed? It's got sweet FA to do with them, to be honest.
Yeah.
So anyone that has taken that part-time job that is out of industry, I would actually advise not to even put that on your CV, especially not at the very top, because I just don't think that fits in line with your career trajectory, and it can actually be damaging to your CV. If you do put it on there and you're worried, just put it as a line item. Don't put like 5-6 points on it. But again, it's that brand. If the first thing I see is estate agent, no offense to anyone who's an estate agent here, but if that's the first thing I see and I'm looking at it for 10 seconds, I'm going to think you're an estate agent.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because actually I had the exact same thing happen when I was sort of only about 21, and I was working in the music industry. And it was funny actually, because the Falcon, it says, oh, your dream job is to work in the music industry. So it's like spot on. So I was working doing that, but then I lost my job. And then I actually had to get a job as an estate agent for a little while. So and yeah, but you kind of you just have to do it for a while. And I didn't make a big thing about it, didn't like mention it. It was just a way to earn some extra money. And then I got the call and I ended up getting my dream job in the music industry while I was waiting. So yeah, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Do you know what though? I do think it says a lot about your character if you will take a part-time job that isn't necessarily what you're looking for, while still job hunting, right? Like we were recently hiring for a manager, like a brand manager role at Lock, and we had over 200 applications in 10 days. It was really overwhelming, slightly upsetting to see that much talent available.
Katie, something you were saying earlier, which I really resonated with, was about the brand if you're let me start this sentence again, please, and thank you. If you are a candidate looking for a role and you're trying to attract a certain type of company, that company also has to fit your value system. And at Lock, I know that you have a really amazing value system, the Lock Pillars, is it called? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm guessing that not everyone here has heard of Lock, and I only joined in January last year, so you can imagine what a year that's been, which has been interesting. So Lock kind of came about we opened our first hotel in 2016, and between 2016 and 2020, we only opened 3 hotels. We had Lehman Lock in Aldgate East, we had Whitworth Lock in Manchester, and we had Eden Lock in Scotland, in Edinburgh. And until that point, we were very much sort of treating it property by property, branding by property. We had the same architect, and we had a vision, but we didn't know how to articulate it. So in 2018, we were bought by Brookfield, which is one of the largest asset management companies in the world, and that kind of set us on a real kind of growth trajectory across Europe. And we had to do a lot of soul searching at that point to really understand, like, how do we distill what Lock actually is and what it actually means and the experience for a lot of people in order to be able to scale it with a level of integrity and consistency. And by consistency, I mean consistent experience, not consistency in terms of like cookie cutter hotel. That's not what we stand for at all. So we had to do a lot of soul searching, and ultimately what it came down to, there were 3 things that really resonate with us as a brand that you can expect in every single one of our hotels, no matter whether you're in London, if you're in Berlin, if you're in Munich, if you're in Copenhagen in the future, and that is locally led. It has to be locally led. So every single hotel that we open is very much led by the local community and the neighborhood that it inhabits. So that is in its design, in the partnerships that we forge with F&B partners, with the actual interior designers, with the kind of on-property activations. It's living space. So Lock is an apart hotel, and the sector is having somewhat of a complete transformation in consumer perceptions at the moment in the wake of COVID. And that's because we offer studio apartments that you can actually live in with kitchens and living space. But then we take all of the kind of like nice fun bits of a hotel, like co-working and restaurants, and combine the 2 so you get the best of both worlds. And then it's our house hosts, and you can probably hear them in the background, they're behind me, but they're just really lovely, approachable people that are experts in the local area, and you can drop them a WhatsApp whenever you need to if you need a recommendation, and they're there. But the challenge for Lock, right, is that no matter where you are, you have these 3 pillars, but I always explain it as a centralized concept with a decentralized design, which means that every single hotel's design is completely different. So today I'm at Berman's Lock, which is in London Bridge, and it's designed to look like an urban oasis, hence why you've got like cacti and all sorts of stuff behind me. But if you go to Kingston Block, it's incredibly urban, and the whole environment is designed to kind of fit into the local area. You know, the upholstery on the seating mimics the overground upholstery on the seats that is in the local kind of tube station, and then you've kind of got the reception desk, which is built to mimic the vernacular of the market stalls around the corner. So it's quite an interesting and complex creative brand challenge to communicate that no matter where you are, you can always expect these 3 things, but it will be in a completely different environment. So how do you generate that loyalty, and how do you create those consumer triggers that makes people want to stay at Lock, even though they might love Berman's Lock because they're in a desert, but hate Kingsland Lock because it feels a little bit different to how you feel when you're in this environment. So it's quite complex. But for me, those three pillars always really resonate. And, you know, our company culture at the end of the day is what keeps me like engaged and present. You are encouraged to be human is one of our kind of corporate brand pillars, and soulful hospitality is the tagline. So every day I'm empowered to be myself, and sure, that might be Lock's kind of like experience pillars, but ultimately everyone in the company embodies like be human and soulful hospitality, which is more of kind of like corporate positioning. So yeah, for me, that's kind of why I'm here, and that's important.
That's amazing. Like so many points to touch upon there. I don't know where to start. Where I am going to start though is something you said about all the properties having a different personality, but understanding the environment you're in with brand consistency whilst also being different. That is such a good key takeaway for people. And I'm going to bring it back to recruitment, because people always say to me, oh, Chris, should I have one CV or should I have 3 CVs? And I'm editing my CV every time I'm applying for a job. And you don't need to be, well, you do a little bit, but if you have that brand consistency, you can have 3 very different CVs, but they all have the same DNA. They just look aesthetically different. And if you can get as a brand that you look at 3 different CVs and then each one go, that is Katie Sharple's CV. That there she is. But she's not looking for a job, guys, by the way. She's staying where she is. But if you know what I mean, if that's Katie Sharple's CV, you would know from the 3 different CVs, they look different, that is her.
Exactly, because you flex, right? You flex depending on your environment, but ultimately your essence is always the same. So yeah, I think that's a really good way to bring it back to recruitment.
Absolutely. And I just one other thing as well to say quickly is not hiding who you are and where you came from in your brand and your personality. So Lock Hotel, where Katie is right now, and that was, in case you saw people walking behind, that was guest checking into a hotel, imagine. And essential stays, I should add. We're open for key workers. Thanks for the disclaimer there, Katie. Legal check-ins. In terms of Berman's Lock, where Katie is, they haven't hidden what they were before. So that hotel was not a hotel to start with, and it's got literally, you know, where the builders write the numbers and their notes on the bricks. They literally have them left on there. There you go. They have them left on there because that is what makes up the DNA of that brand, and it represents the area that it's in. So
yeah. Do you know what's really funny is that I know that one of the development directors is on the call that worked on this project, so he's going to be like, that was me. There's some amazing stories behind this property, and if you do get a chance, please do come down after the 17th of May, so you can check it out. But yeah, I think that's the thing for us. It's more about reducing and bringing back the buildings themselves to their true form in a lot of ways, but then like creating narratives within that as well. So I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes, and I'm sure Chris Penabad, who I know is on this call, will testify to that. But there's stories, and that's the most.
Absolutely. And just to touch on that, not hiding where you came from and what you think could be your weakness is often your biggest strength. Like some people I've talked to this week have been like, oh, I've got a really strong accent, I don't want to get on the phone, or I've got a very, very bold fashion sense. Like use it because it's what makes you stand out and what makes you individual. And people often think, oh, I shouldn't put this on my CV or that on my CV. And yes, put it there. Be bold, because once you know your brand after this call, you will know who you're trying to target, and those people will appreciate that quirkiness and uniqueness. And on that note, Jen Bayford. I haven't heard from you in a little while. It's rare.
It is rare. And actually, all the while Katie was talking then, I had a think ahead of our session this evening about everything that the likes of Katie and I, who work in marketing, can teach the crowd about marketing that can be applied to brand you. I had to think about that. And first of all, I think it'd be useful if I gave you my own definition of branding, and other marketeers might disagree, but my definition of branding when I'm marketing a client's company is that a brand is what your target audience thinks of when they think of the said company. So therefore, a brand's image, so a company's brand is made up of visual aspects, so its look and feel, its colours, its imagery, and the words that it uses, so its language, strap lines, tone of voice, and then most importantly, its personality and values, which is some of the things that Katie's just been talking about. So a distinctive brand would have thought about all of those aspects and how they communicate the complete brand to that intended audience. So Katie touched on that loads, and that completely applies to one's personal brand or one's self-brand. So by considering what makes up a brand, you can kind of take responsibility for how people see you and kind of own it, as Chris just said, own your quirkiness. But you can ensure that the best of you reaches those that you are presenting to, in whatever form that is, as it were.
100%, Jen. I also think it's not just about what people think about, but it's also what they feel when they are interacting with your brand as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because I have a physical space that I can make people feel something. Yeah. But equally, when you meet someone, you instantly feel something, right? You get an energy. And that also really makes a difference. I think, if you're nervous, that's fine. You can be vulnerable, but ultimately you're going to give off this kind of energy. It's like dating, right? I'm not even going to go there. I know Chris is jumping at the bit to bring that up now. But you do just get an energy, and you can tell straight away like how that person's going to make you feel, I think.
Yeah. So can I steal that then, Katie, for my own definition? So I'm going to say think and feel about a brand. Yeah. Okay. I'll claim that.
There you go. And I think Rosie will probably add an extra bit to that definition as well with colour.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely color like makes people feel so many different things. I mean, I as you can see, I love yellow, and yellow sort of makes people feel cheerful and happy and things. And it's about also like sharing yourself online. It makes people feel more. You want to kind of, as a personal brand, I think you want people to feel like they get to know you. And a client said a really nice thing on a shoot the other day, and she said like, I posted a photo of me at my desk, and she said that made her feel so comfortable, like she just felt like she knew me before we ever met face to face. And that's great. I mean, that's wonderful to think that I can sort of create that connection with my clients so that when we then meet, they're already feeling comfortable with me. So, I mean, you want to be kind of putting yourself out there so that people feel that even if you're not meeting face to face, that they feel like they know you and that they can start to like you and get all the warm feelings about you.
Absolutely. And I actually met Rosie. Oh, I don't know if I'm buffering or just moving slowly. I met Rosie on LinkedIn initially because her branding was so bloody good. Pushing on from colours, I think imagery in general. Imagery is so important for a brand. It can make or break it. Rosie, talk to us about imagery.
Sure. Well, I mean, when I do a brand shoot, there's kind of 3 different ways that I kind of work with people. We do sort of the kind of headshots, the ones you might want to use as a profile image. But I think like that kind of story about being at your desk, you want to show like a more relaxed side to you as well, and so people can imagine being there with you, seeing behind the scenes of what you're doing, not just smiling with a bright background. But so I like to involve the workspace and also relaxing as well, just like with a cup of tea or something like that, and but bringing those bright colors so that it jumps out on the screen, because LinkedIn is so gray. Obviously it's got to work with your brand, and it can't just have a bright photo and then they click through to your website and it's not across the website as well. It's got to be everywhere. You know, the whole brand needs to work together, and like Jen said about the language, it needs, you know, you can't have a really cheerful, bright, colorful photo and then a really formal corporate website. You kind of it needs to work together. But, you know, as an initial point, going through LinkedIn when it's so grey and a lot of stock photography as well, having a good quality photo in bright colours, or even just a good quality photo that kind of shows a bit of personality, it is going to make a massive difference and make people sit up and go, oh, that's a bit different to everything else. And then they'll kind of click through to your profile and kind of go on from there. So, yeah, you want to show a bit of personality in your photos, and not just sort of posing at the camera, but yeah, showing you at work and the more casual side.
I've got a question about that, Rosie.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you a bit about body language, because it's one of the facets, I would say, of a self-brand, of a personal brand. Yeah. And I spotted on your Instagram how where you've shot lots of different people, their body language is quite different in different photos, but all really positive. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find it's the same thing with every shoot I do. Everybody, you kind of might look at somebody and think that, oh, they're very confident, they're, you know, absolutely beautiful, you know, what they've got to be worried about. Every single person that comes to see me is self-conscious about being in front of the camera, and it takes time to feel relaxed, but it's really important that you kind of push through that, and we kind of start a session with a cup of tea. And that's why I like photographing people one-to-one, because it's nice to kind of become friends, really. That's why I like photographing. You know, I've set myself out, my branding is to attract people that I love working with, because we have a great time and we become friends, and then it's you know, the photos are better because we're both having a good time. And people start off really stiff and self-conscious, and then as time goes on they get more used to it, and then by the end of the session we're getting loads and loads of really good ones. But everybody's the same, that you know, feeling self-conscious is, you can definitely tell in a photo when people are feeling a bit self-conscious, and you can sort of, the shoulders go up, but you really don't want that. You kind of have to throw yourself into it, because you want to come across as confident, because you should be like, you're running your own business, or you're showing off how great you are, and you want people to connect with you and to look confident. So it's just, sometimes you just have to push through it and kind of get used to this kind of weird alien feeling of being photographed. But it's important to have fun on the shoot, not take yourself too seriously. Just try lots of different things, and there's always loads of like outtakes and stuff, but we only publish the good ones. So
yeah. And Chris, what about body language in interview? Have you got anything to say about that, about projecting your brand?
Yeah, so much. I mean, me opinion, what? Yeah, I mean, Rosie, everything you said there, totally agree. And if anyone hasn't already, please check out Rosie's Instagram.
Oh, yes.
It is
there for days.
Everything we're talking about now, just Rosie Parsons is the case study for it. It's color, personality, no given, and just bringing out this joy. It's like, if you can bottle up joy on an Instagram account, it's that.
Thank you.
In terms of body language and how important it is for your brand over an interview, again, like Rosie was saying, even though there's been a year of us talking over video cameras, it's not natural. There's lags on the internet. There's your mum knocking on the door. No,
that's just you, Chris.
There's a cat on Jen's desk. There's a child in the background of Rosie's.
Oh yes, Rosie.
And there's guests checking in behind Katie. We've all got an Achilles heel here. It doesn't make a comfortable environment for your brand. Like, this background is not my brand, but going back to what we're saying, it makes you a real human being, so you shouldn't be worried about it. Just try and think that other person is going to be just as uncomfortable talking to a camera. It doesn't come naturally. Just try not to slouch and not to look around, like try and keep focus on the camera. Like I've got notes right now, like, and a lot of people interviewing will have notes. So if you feel better disclaimering that you are looking down because you've got notes, great. But just be yourself. I think that's the
100%. I also think eye contact is quite important, be it on camera or in real life. I think, I mean, especially with like front-facing personable roles, right? You want to feel that that person is engaging with you, and I think eye contact is one of the most important and powerful things that you can do. Not like staring at you down the screen. God, I look so psychotic when I do that. But like just smile, be friendly, make eye contact. I remember our old CEO Chris always used to be like, "You smile a lot." I was like, "Well, yeah, when you got teeth this big, you would." But I do think that's important.
Absolutely. And just to go back to imagery, because Katie, I want to get your take on this really quickly as well. Also, just really quickly, something you said earlier as well, Rosie, about having consistency with the imagery that you're using, and going back to what Jen said about that image then relating to the words. Everything interlinks, guys. So having that brand consistency, by having a personality or projecting a personality on LinkedIn, just to be clear, that image doesn't need to be the same on LinkedIn as it needs to be on Instagram, as it needs to be on Facebook. Also, the image you use on LinkedIn, I don't want to see you in vodka revs with eyeballs the size of Brazil and holding a bottle of Moët. Don't want to see it.
That's horrendous. No.
Yeah, horrendous. Don't go to Beer One either. But I see too much of that on LinkedIn.
Right.
You need to have, that's not on brand, and that person hasn't thought about that brand. Or the worst one I see is someone going, "Oh, I haven't changed my LinkedIn picture in 7 years."
Yeah.
And I'll Katie, I'll view them and be like, "Who are you? Like, are you standing in for someone else? Because that person on your LinkedIn profile just got out of uni."
Actually,
I look much more fresh-faced.
I'm going to pick up on something that Katie said earlier about not conforming. So not conforming isn't the same as being a rebel.
Yeah.
And actually, no one likes a rebel. You know, a rebel that is to. Oh, okay. Katie apparently does. Are we going back to your dating profile again? So yeah, but okay. People may like rebels. What I'm saying is, still, you've got to be professional. So the vodka revs one is something we did discuss, wasn't it, when we were prepping for today, is when you're looking at all the channels that may be seen by people that you work with / want to be employed by, do make your private accounts private as can be, because no one wants anything dug up, do they, from a hen do 10 years ago.
Yeah. On that note, don't search for my personal Instagram account or Facebook account unless you're last.
It's so true.
Yeah. Going back to imagery, Katie. So consistency with imagery and the choice you make with the images. It's like some of the brand campaigns you've done for Lock, those images aren't there by accident.
No, it's very intentional.
Talk about that and how important that is.
Yeah, so I think we built up a very distinct aesthetic on Instagram in particular, very, very design led. And I think whereas a lot of hotels look like they, that you can see the kind of inhabitants like being in the space, right? Our spaces tend to be like very, very beautifully curated and very like, which, it certainly serves a purpose, but I think as we're growing, and after we did this whole exercise of soul searching last year, our sort of tagline is feel free and empowering people to use the space as they want to, so they can continue their day to day. So we're trying to find ways to integrate people into using the space, right? And actually, when we were coming up with our first ever brand campaign over COVID was absolutely amazing for creativity, by the way. Like, you know, there's this whole theory around boredom and creativity. Well, for us, it was 100% true. And we just ended up like having this amazing kind of renaissance of ideas. It was great. And what ended up happening is that we worked with a photographer who we met when we opened Lehman. I say we, obviously I wasn't there. So Jason, who's on our content and partnerships team, and she was fresh out of university, doing her final year when we met her, and then did her graduate piece shot at one of the hotels. And then we kept in touch with her, and her style is very kind of quirky, Wes Anderson, like it's very different and a little bit sort of makes you look twice and it's a little bit weird at times, but that's what we liked. So when we were kind of brainstorming like what do we want our brand campaign to look like, we realized, well, we've got it right in front of us. It's with someone that has grown with the brand. We've met organically through them interacting with the brand anyway, but that's cool as long as you're doing you and you feel free to use the space as you want to. Like, that's what we're trying to convey in our imagery, even if it is falling out of the washing machine in a ball gown. That's cool by us, just preferably don't break the washing machine. But yeah, I think that again, like, it sort of is that double, makes you do a double take, and it's not a hotel bed. If anything, we don't post pictures of a hotel bed in our brand campaigns because it's how we want people to feel when they see the imagery. And it's not a case of showing them the product. You want to sell them the dream, not be too descriptive in your imagery as well.
Absolutely. It's such good advice. No, it's such good advice, Katie. And something Jen said to me on our one-to-one was, you don't always want to be doing the same thing as everyone else. And it's really okay when you're planning marketing. If it's St. Paddy's Day today and you want to be seen, then you don't have to do that post. You can do a take on that post. So don't be afraid to be, again, like you said, Jen, you don't need to be the rebel all the time, but you can be disruptive with tiny tweaks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And then just
also, I think people can see when you're trying too hard as well. So
absolutely. I've fallen flat on my face with that many times in my previous careers. In terms of Vanessa, thank you for highlighting me to Guy's question. Me and Guy actually know each other well. I've had the pleasure. And Guy, absolutely, just thank you for being making yourself a bit vulnerable here with that question. It's really, really brave of you. So Guy has a stammer and does, obviously, looking for a job when you've got a stammer right now, it's just another barrier to overcome. When we talk, we will always have video chats, and I'll make the time to do that with Guy. But obviously, it does depend on who you're talking to, what companies. I don't think you should hide the fact that you have it. I think definitely actually put it there and own it. Like we're saying,
if anything, like you should feel empowered to own it, and please do. I think if you went to an employer and they penalised you for having a stammer, that is not someone that you want to work with. Like, just to be clear, you should not want to work for that employer if that's their approach. So own it and don't feel intimidated by them, and always remember that you are interviewing the brand as much as they're interviewing you as well. So don't feel like that's a.
I don't know if he's still watching or if he's gone off to have his tea, but oh yes, Simon Houghton. That I was going to say. Simon he's just started his social enterprise, which is We Support Deaf Awareness. Hi. I thought you might have gone off to watch EastEnders, but he is very, very proud of being deaf. Is that deaf with a lowercase d, Simon, or an uppercase d? I can never remember. But actually, it might be good for you two to chat. Because you're deaf, not deaf. Okay, yeah, lowercase d. It might be good for you two to chat. You can own each other's issues when it comes to, not feeling like you can own them.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. That's amazing. So Guy and Simon connect. That's really, really fantastic. Love it when the universe, literally, you've manifested each other tonight. And to go on to our final kind of pillar is we've talked a lot about understanding our brands, owning our brands, knowing our market. How do we then take those brands to market is the final part of this webinar we want to talk about. So Jen, you touched upon it a bit earlier about platforms. Please expand.
Yeah, so I was sort of kind of brainstorming to prepare for this, kind of all of the different channels that we would use in a marketing campaign, which I'm sure Katie has got kind of scribbled in the back of her pad at all times. So I tried to apply those to kind of brand you, and they kind of fell into a couple of categories, and some of them are much more overt. So they are things that you very much can control. So your LinkedIn profile, making sure that your about is really fleshed out and really talks about you. Because some people on their LinkedIn profile, they just put like a couple of lines, a bit apologetic. And actually a great one to look at is yours, Chris. Lots of personality in there. I'm not necessarily saying that mine's wonderful, but I did spend a lot of time trying to bring out some of the stuff that I learned from my dolphin profile into my bio, into my about, to give myself a bit more personality and to stand out. But then there are other places where you can talk about yourself. So if you have signed up to any online recruitment agencies, there'll be a bio in there about you somewhere, and you might have written it 10 years ago along with Katie's LinkedIn photo, and that is a place where you can bring out your brand. Then thinking about some stuff that Rosie talked about colour and personality in that sense, like your space at work, like your desk, like your lunchbox. I know, like, that's a really stupid thing to say, but like, without being contrived, like how you are represents your brand. So if you've got like a McDonald's on your desk, that's very different to, you know, having a nice tidy desk with your lunchbox on it. I know that's a really silly analogy, but I have actually sacked someone before because they had a rollie behind their ear and a McDonald's McMuffin on their desk. I think sacked actually probably not the right word. It was he was in his probationary period. So they fell into two camps when I was thinking about your channels. The overt one, you know, do you have a website? Are you on your company's website? But then there were more subtle ones that, without being contrived, are things to think about, I think, when you're conveying your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. That story alone was worth coming to this webinar. No, if anyone ever has the chance to work with Jen, don't eat a McDonald's egg muffin in front of her and smoke straights, not rollies. There we go. Lesson learned. There's your brand. That's really good advice. And obviously, we touched upon it earlier, and I don't want to keep hounding the image side of it. But Rosie, when you take my pictures, how am I going to decide which one of the hundreds of pictures are on your camera roll? What's right for that?
Yeah, well, you need to kind of have a good selection for different uses. So obviously there's like the profile headshots and things, which it's just nice to get a selection so you're not got the same one, you know, for the whole year. It's kind of nice to change them up maybe once a month and just keeps things fresh, gets people noticing your profile again. Oh, that's different, but it's another nice one. But also kind of those more relaxed ones, like at your desk or sort of, you know, having a coffee or walking or something like that as well. Those can be really nice if you want to do a post, a talkative post on LinkedIn, and kind of, again, like getting your face out there without being salesy. I mean, it's an amazing way to kind of just remind people that you're there without being like, buy from me, but just saying, hey, remember, like, you know, I know what I'm talking about. I'm an expert in this area. You know, write a little article and then post a photo of you, and then they're getting to know you, and they're seeing that you're an expert, and they're learning something as well, and they're just reminded of you, which is great. So you want the kind of photos like that. But you might want to think about, you know, your LinkedIn banner. Some of them, like the LinkedIn banner, is so long and thin, isn't it? So you want to have like a think about like what kind of design might I want to do for that. And I think Kaylee's on the chat as well. She's watching as well. I'm working with her on graphic design stuff at the moment, and we've been coming up with some designs for LinkedIn banners. And it's you got to think, like, where am I going to use these photos, and make sure that you pick photos that will work for those different layouts. That's really important, and a nice selection. But just going back to sort of what Jen was saying about kind of your desk and stuff, and I definitely agree with that. Like, since focusing down on color and just the stuff that brings me joy, it's like I try and only photograph people that bring me joy, and that's what my whole brand is like basically trying to bring those people to me and put off people that are really corporate and sort of don't want to be colorful and joyful and happy. But I buy stuff for my everyday life that make me happy, like this mug, lover of all cats. Yeah. I love cats. It makes me smile when I buy that. And a nice smell. I've got a nice candle going, and it's just and I spray painted my kitchen seats bright colors, and my kitchen is bright blue and white stripes. It's just like I try and bring things that bring me joy into all areas of life, and that's authentic. It just means that you're being real, being you, and you're going to attract people who like that, and that's going to make your life better, and you're going to get to work with brilliant people, and it just makes it get better and better.
Amazing. It's so true. Jen, go on.
Oh, how do you know I was going to say something? Did I go? I was just touching on something that Rosie said, like, that really spoke to her purpose and her why. Like, she really loves to help people in a certain way. And I love wheeling out the Simon Sinek stuff around our, the start with why. I mean, I don't know a marketeer who doesn't love wheeling that out in conversation, but it applies for brands, as in corporate brands, as in our own brands. And actually, if you can kind of get your own why into your everyday, into everything you communicate, that really sets you apart from other people and really makes you really individual.
Absolutely. It's such a good point. Honestly, if even if the viewers here were not here, us three did a dry run of this a week ago, and we went on for an hour just talking about tiny little things. So we could all chat for hours and hours and hours about this and go off on various tangents. But the why, for all of us, is at the core of our brand. If there's not a purpose behind a post, an email, whatever you're doing, then you've lost your brand identity straight away. So you have purpose, and you have the understanding of the people that you are branding towards, which is what Rosie was saying. Again, what Rosie was saying as well is you don't actually want to attract everyone, which is such simple advice. But the people that Jen wants to work with are not going to be the people that someone else wants to work with. The people that Rosie wants to work with, same thing. Katie doesn't want to attract people that will probably stay at the Marriott. Like, that is, it's not the same brand, and that's okay. But she will want to attract people that like staying.
Oh no,
like it's different. So on that, Katie, I think you're the best person to sum this up.
Oh no, my internet's going.
Oh, I can still hear you. Can you hear us? Yeah, you back? Good. Talk to us once anyone in this chat has got the understanding of their animal. They know who they are. They know who they're trying to attract. They've looked at the colors, the imagery, the wording. They're ready to go. How are they taking that to market?
We've got 7 openings in 7 months in 3 different countries. It's hard work, I'm not going to lie. So we have a very curious team. And I think the most important thing that you can do is spend time in the destination that you are going to be launching a brand in. Lean on the people who know it best, trust their judgment and research. And those kind of, again, you can apply it to anything. You can apply it to job seeking as well. You know, ask friends if they've worked there before, what the culture's like, research the company and that kind of thing. But it is a real challenge. So we do a huge body of work whenever we open a new hotel, especially in a market. Like, I feel like with London, it's pretty straightforward. We're all pretty tapped into what's going on, what would resonate, what wouldn't. Germany, which we're launching in next month, that's tough because there's the language barrier, there's cultural differences. We can't travel there at the moment to feel what we need to feel. So it's tough, yeah. But again, what we are trying to do is work with people that are experts in the local area, work with people that we do really trust the opinion of. And, you know, it's a collaborative process. You have to make sure that there is constant dialogue between teams so they understand the brand. Because let me tell you, translating a brand that has a very, very clear identity in the UK is incredibly challenging when you're trying to grow a team and a brand in another country that hasn't even traveled to see a hotel because of the international travel restrictions, and really kind of crystallize what that is. So again, it is challenging, but I think if you're really passionate about it as well, and you do spend time talking, sharing ideas, and, you know, just making sure that you kind of put your ego to one side as well, and don't think that just because you're good at marketing in the UK or in one specific market, you can apply the same principles, because it's not going to fly there, let me tell you. So it's quite a humbling experience as well. And yeah, just always be curious and ask questions too.
Absolutely. So maintain that why the whole way through. If something doesn't work, then move on. You've learned from it, and don't just assume because one thing has worked on one platform that it's gonna work on that other platform.
I've got something to add to that. So something I meant to say earlier was that brands, when it comes to companies, it's the same as brands as individuals. Brand building doesn't happen overnight. It builds, it deepens and gets stronger as the company grows or as you grow. And actually it will change. Brands change over the years. They move with the times. So should we. We should adapt as things change.
Absolutely. And Rosie, I think you already on 2.0, aren't you? You've gone from trawling the streets to home studio with your pictures.
Yeah, well, originally, sort of, I was kind of going out more with people, kind of like going to like vibrant, colourful cities, like go to Bristol, Brighton, Central London. But I mean, that's great, and I still do that. But there is some problems because if it's raining, it's, you know, obviously difficult, and yeah, it's just fine. You have to find, you know, if you're looking for a particular shade of blue, it's trying to find that kind of, that wall can be quite tricky. So I've been sort of more playing around with, like, I've been renovating my house, and because I really love what I do, and I love the people I work with, I wanted my house to be sort of like a home studio and to be welcoming, and so the whole house is a home studio now, and I've set it up so that there's lots of different kind of pockets within the house that can make nice backgrounds, and I also paint backgrounds. I'll look at somebody's brand, talk to them about what they like, and then we'll start like looking at clothing and accessories, and it might be like I did some shots for Kaylee, who's like in this group, and like her branding's got kind of circles and blues and pinks, and basically I tried to kind of then paint backgrounds that look similar to her branding, and then we did a mixture of, like, you know, relaxed shots in her brand colours on the sofa and things, then moving to the desk, and then like with the painted backgrounds. And yeah, it's a nice way to kind of bring a lot of personality in and make things that are really unique. And it doesn't matter about the weather, and you haven't got builders wolf whistling at you.
Let's not start that conversation. that went south very quickly. But no, in terms of you've basically moved your product offering forwards. You've got a 2.0 version, and I think that's so important for your brand. Like Jem was saying, your brand today might not necessarily be your brand tomorrow, but it's what makes your brand DNA. like I can't remember the website name, but there's a website thing you can see someone's website from like 5 years ago. I can't remember what it is. Casey would know. But yeah, if you looked at my website a year ago, lockdown 1, it is completely different to the brand now. The values have remained the same, but the identity and my knowledge of who I'm marketing to are completely different. We're actually going to run out of time, and Vanessa's going to tell me off. I think one final topic we will talk on, just to not bore everyone, is something that you're all very passionate about, which is the consumer versus corporate branding. I think for anyone that is on here that is either a candidate looking for different types of roles, or a business owner themselves that wants to find where they are in the marketplace, this is probably the topic you need to be listening to. Katie, I know you're already going to chew my ear off on this one, so do you want to start and we'll go from there?
Yeah, sure. I touched on it earlier, actually. And like Eden as a parent company has its own kind of set of values and its own identity that it looks for in its people, especially being a hospitality business, right? Your people is what drives you as a company. So those are very clearly defined, and it's be human, the courage to question, and I've forgotten the third one, which is really bad. Someone's going to message me and tell me off for that. And be brave. I need to double check. Oops. And I think those are the kind of values that we look for in the people that we work with. But then our consumer brand is completely different, right? Because at the end of the day, it's more about appealing to certain demographics, certain psychographics. It's kind of tapping into the zeitgeist. Whereas I think with your corporate brand, it's far more enduring and sustainable. Whereas you need to be adaptable as a consumer-facing brand. You need to react. You need to be responsive. And I think, ultimately it goes back to your values, right? We're always adapting and responding to changes in like social change or cultural change. But regardless, I think, ultimately the feed, who's that? Chris Pedabad. Thank you. There we go. To evolve. That was the one. Yep. Literally threw me under a bus. Well, I threw myself under a bus actually, but I appreciate the prompt. Whereas it's far more sustainable and enduring. Please don't tell our HR director. So yeah, I think you can also. I do feel to a certain extent though that corporate branding and consumer branding should have a level of crossover, right? Because ultimately, you're building people, you're building a brand around people, and you can't build a brand that is consumer facing if you don't have the kind of creativity and the values embedded in your corporate brand. So yeah. Oh, and Hannah Grover as well. She used to work for us, so she's called me out as well.
There we go. I mean, that's why this webinar is fantastic, because we're not going to pretend to be perfect humans, like in any sense here. we all make mistakes. It's just Katie will get fired for hers in the morning. It's fine. But no, it's something you said there was about how corporate and consumer marketing, there is an overlap, but there probably should be more of one. I've noticed in the travel industry, to start with, the need and desire for people to know people behind the brands a lot more, and it's making that tone a human element behind corporate language. We joked about it at the beginning of this, and Jen, I'm sure you've got an opinion on this, coming from Goodwood and now spreading your wings.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. So actually, we've got the chance to set our own kind of corporate agenda now that we've got our own company, and I've taken everything I've learned over the last 20 years of being in other companies and not doing it in my own quite often. I'm not criticizing, but it's just nice to be able to blank canvas and start from the beginning. So we have gorgeous policies like unlimited holiday.
Where do I start? We're all like, what is this?
I know. Well, when we need an HR department, when we've gotten big, Chris, you can come and be our HR director.
That's carnage ensuing already. Yeah, Katie's seen me at a Christmas party. You don't want me as the HR director. And lastly, I think, Rosie, what's your take on obviously corporate to consumer branding?
Well, yeah, it's really, really important that you kind of get your face on like your website. I was talking to a client today, and she's only got a tiny little video of herself on there, and you have to kind of wade through loads of stock photos to get to about her. And actually, you know, what she does is so important, and you know, it's really important that we connect with people. Even if you're kind of working in corporate environment, you're going to be buying services from a human. And so if you're going to get a coach or somebody to come, you want to understand who they are, not just what they do, but you want to kind of look them in the eye and really, you know, feel I can trust this person. I like the look of them. They look like they can help me. So to me, it's all kind of intermingled. And, you know, I focus on like really photographing one person businesses, so very small businesses where you kind of do everything, and that's like even more important really. But I'd say like for whatever size business you're involved in, like you need to bring the personality and the personal brand sort of is like integral to the main corporate brand as well.
Yeah. It's so and you don't, like Jen said at the very beginning of this, just because others do it, question why. You don't need to be the same as everyone else. The status quo is not always right. It really isn't.
No.
Yeah.
It's actually more important to stand out and be different, because now we're all gone online. We're not out networking face to face. That's your one chance to get noticed and be memorable. And if you're the same as everyone else, then people just scroll right past. They need to see you and go, oh, there's something different about them. And yes, they might think that's not for me, but that's fine. You need to stand out and bring that personality and show people who you are. And then the people that would love you and think you're marvelous will be drawn to you. If you kind of try and hide yourself, then those people who would think you're marvelous won't get to see that, and they'll just scroll right past. So you need to kind of stand up and be proud of who you are, show the personality and show what's different about you, and you know.
And as an example, Chris King is here because your Lightning Travel Recruitment is an epitome of standing out, isn't it? And owning it. And you've taken quite a boring profession, love, and made it very attractive and charismatic.
But it wouldn't be Chris if it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So brand the people. Lightning.
It's that if you do have a small business, thank you, Jen, that's so sweet. If you do have a small business, have the understanding of who you are and who you're trying to attract, because there are companies that ask to work with me, and I'm like, I don't know, like we're never going to work together, and that's okay. I say it nicely, like that's okay. But like Rosie said, I attract the small businesses, people who want that extra care, extra attention. They don't want that packaged product. That's fantastic if you're able to do that. But to be able to do that, I think all of us here on this call would be able to answer our brand in 3 words pretty easily. And if you think you can do that, but ask one of your friends to describe you in those 3 words. I bet they're different words. It's a really good exercise to do, and work out what your 3 words are and go from there.
Yeah, great idea.